Welcome back to A Step in Time. Last week we were visiting about Waynesboro in Civil War Days by Matilda Ripple Dietrich. This time, as we go into her story a little more, she starts to talk about the newspaper office. And she says the newspaper office was in the room above W.A. Treitle's store. Then in 1863, it moved across the street to a room above Dr. Brotherton's office in the only building in town that entirely was devoted to businesses. Judging from the frequency with which the editor urged delinquent subscribers to pay, cash was hard to get. One week, he had a cutout of a man hanging on a gallows, and beneath the cutout, a list of names with the amount each person owed. Later, he published each week the names of those from whom he had received cash during the week and the amount he received. It was the custom when there was a wedding to send the editor a notice to be published, and with that notice, a generous amount of cake from the wedding or other delicacies. But on several occasions, a dollar bill was sent instead, and he expressed himself as being especially pleased, as dollar bills were a rare thing for an editor. The altar was the section devoted to wedding announcements, and coupled with it was the tomb, under which were announced deaths. Deaths were much more frequent than weddings. Sometimes there were 2, 3, and even 5 deaths in a family told in a single issue of the paper. For scarlet fever and diphtheria prevailed with alarming fatality. Even smallpox was very prevalent at the time. The editor and several of his sons were ill with smallpox in 1863, and some of the people discontinued the paper. But when the editor got back to the office after an absence of 6 weeks, he assured his patrons there was no danger, as he had not been near the office and all new materials had been ordered and received. He was pleased to meet his friends, especially those in arrears, provided they were fortunate enough to have funds to spare. The notice of a death was usually accompanied by lines of original or copied verse. This stanza gives an idea of many. Affliction sore long time she bore. Physicians were in vain, till God was pleased to give her ease and free her from her pain. Long and contented together, o'er the ocean of life may they sail. May happiness sit at the helm, while prosperity bloweth the gale. Those were from the altar, January 1st, 1864. The weather in January 1864 must have been similar to some we have had this season, 1923, for it was mild with insects humming in the air. Later, pocket handkerchiefs and patent medicines were much in demand on account of the changeable weather. March 25, 1864, the record told the death of J. Henry Kallenbeck, who became ill in the office. He was taken to his home and given the best possible medical attention, but died the next day. In the opinion of Dr. Brotherton, he died of typhus fever. There were 4 doctors practicing in Waynesboro in war times: Dr. Thomas Walker, Dr. James Brotherton, Jr., Dr. John Oleus, Jr., and Dr. E.A. Herring. Dr. James Brotherton, Sr. was no longer able to practice, and Dr. Thomas Walker died in January of 1863 in his 69th year. He had practiced for 40 years. All 5 of his sons were in the Army, only one of them, Captain W. W. Walker, being home on furlough at the time of his death. Someone had expressed sorrow for him because his sons had all left home to go into the Army. But he replied that he was sorry he had no more sons to serve their country. In 1863, Mr. Isaac Snively graduated from Jefferson Medical College. The record says, Mr. Snively is a young man of studious habits and rare social qualities, and is otherwise eminently fitted for the profession he has selected. Dr. Snively served in the Army and later came to Waynesboro to practice. In 1864, Daniel Bonebrake and John Royer of this place graduated from Bellevue Hospital Medical College. Dr. Royer practiced here for a short time. The advertisements in the Village Record of those days are an interesting study. J. Hostetter of Greencastle brought fresh fish here during the season, either Friday or Saturday of each week. Country people were requested to leave their orders with E.W. Washbaugh, the tobaccoist. Messrs. Unger and Krause had nurseries and sold fruit trees, evergreens, ornamental trees, etc. Updegaffs of Hagerstown, I hope I pronounced that right, carried a half-column ad each week. T.J. Filbert, the draper, sold Singer's family sewing machines and had a neat little border around his advertisement and was not more than 5 lines. You could get anything in the drug line at J.F. Kurtz, also kerosene lamps, kerosene oil, alcohol, and burning fluid. John Stover had dry goods, queensware, and hardware. And Snively and Funk had flour, feed, and the provision store. On May 2nd, 1861, Mr. M.C. Rezer had a notice and opened a new millinery establishment in Church Street, a few doors south of the Diamond. The same notice was in several 1862 issues. So it had a lot of different businesses. They have, oh, here she goes over, this is interesting. She goes over prices. So, new firm, coachmaking, carriages, buggies, and blacksmithing and repairing. Country produce taken in exchange for work. Baltimore markets were quoted each week with local market prices being reported by Amerson and Benedict. Butter was 15 cents a pound, but it went up to 16 cents a pound, and eggs were 10 cents a pound and went up to 12 cents a pound. Wow. Dealer in all the variety of drugs, medicine, Yankee notions, perfumery, liquors for medicinal purposes, oils, etc., etc., etc. F. Forthman was the only one who advertised that and Christmas goods. In 1863, 2 weeks before Christmas, he would start advertising his Christmas toys. So that's just a little bit more from our young lady, Miss Matilda Ripple Dietrich, talking about the newspaper at the time and some of the businesses that were around at the time. We will be back next week with more on her story. Hope you enjoyed. Sorry, it's kind of hard. I stumbled over a few of those words, but I think you get the gist. You guys have a great day. Bye.